Hey, good morning folks. Welcome back to Markelly Farm. We're going to do a little bit different video today, and you won't see very many of these videos on our channel where I'm just talking and not showing you something. I don't enjoy those videos a lot, but if they're really informative, I can sit through them, and I'm going to try to make this as informative as I can. So stick with me, and today we're going to talk about running a homestead and doing it successfully. So stick around. So as you follow along with us here on Markelly Farm, I can imagine that you don't see me making a lot of mistakes. I do make them though, but that's not because I'm some super homesteader and I know everything. I've been farming and doing stuff like this pretty much all my life because I grew up on a dairy farm and have done different farming operations and have been around that stuff. And it's not that I've never made mistakes, but I have a lot of experience doing a lot of this stuff. I've done a lot of this stuff in my life, and not just farming, fabricating, building houses and stuff like that. So through doing stuff like that all your life, you gain a lot of knowledge. It's not something that you're just born with. So I don't want you to think that I'm some super homesteader and I know and can do everything. So with that being said, I like to share that knowledge with other people. So maybe they don't have to go through the years and years of doing this stuff like I did to be successful. And you can learn from the mistakes that I've made in the past, and I can tell you how things work and how things work out the best and what to avoid and stuff like that. Now, we're going to go through about 10 things that I think you need to know to be successful. If you can kind of follow this framework, it'll take you a long way into being successful and not making a lot of mistakes. So the number one important thing that I think you can do is keep things manageable. Don't get going so crazy and doing so many things that you're not doing any of them well. Do a few things and do them well. It's no different than like in the restaurant business. If you make your menu too big or something like that, you end up doing everything mediocre. Pick a handful of things that you really like to do them well, and once you get those things down to where they're manageable and you've set yourself up for success to where they run pretty much on their own, then you can venture out and do other things. And I recommend that you kind of do one thing additional at a time, and then you'll know when you reach the point where you're almost not being manageable anymore. And that's where you want to stop or refocus your attention. Maybe you don't want to do some of the things you started doing anymore, and you can refocus your attention on other things. But you want to keep it manageable to where it's not such an overburden to where it becomes such a chore that you just regret going out and doing it, or you can't get the energy, get motivated to go out and do these things anymore, because homesteading is a lot of things in repetition over and over, doing the same thing every day. You got to make sure you're on board with that before you start this stuff. Now, one of the channels that Kelly and I view, it's a couple that recently moved to a newer area, and they're developing their new homestead. It's bigger. It's better, but in my mind, watching them over the past couple years, they're getting so big and so complex that they're not doing everything well anymore. They're having lots of failures. You hear lots of, well, don't mind this over here, we haven't got to that, or this really didn't work out because we haven't had the time. Things are just starting to slip, and you don't want to get in that to where there's too much going on. And believe me, they got a lot going on. So try to avoid that. Now, when you get to think you want to homestead, um, don't jump in with both feet, not knowing a lot about it at first. In other words, don't quit your day job right away. Keep that source of income that as a backup if things just don't work out. And if you start small, like I recommend, you'll be able to do that and still be able to carry on through working, even if it's just full time or something like that. But make sure it's something that you're going to want to do, and it's going to be something you want to continue to do before you just go quit your job and say, I'm going to homestead and we'll be fine and we'll have everything we need. Make sure that that's the case before you cut off that source of income, because there's not a lot of people that can just go full blown homestead right off the bat, be successful, and be able to support your family and feed your family without an additional sort of income. Now, once you get things going and you're able to function and do that, that's great. But keep that safety net for a little while is a big recommendation of mine. Now, number 3 is do your research. There's lots and lots of information on YouTube, and you can sort through it. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good, and you can see that as you go through. You can see people's successes, you can see their failures. You can see what you have to do to be prepared for certain things. Do your homework. Got to do that. You can't go into this stuff blind, and you're going to fail if you do that. If you're interested in a specific thing with homesteading, do as much research on that as you can. And you'll be a lot more successful in the long run if you do that. Educate yourself. Now let's talk about animals. Animals on the homestead could be your single most expensive thing you're going to do. Now, animals on a homestead need to serve a purpose, in my opinion. You don't want to fill your homestead full of pets or novelty animals that are just what I call hay burners. All they do is consume. They don't provide anything back unless it's just companionship you're looking for, like a dog or something like that. That's fine. Or if you're independently wealthy, great. Have as many animals as you want. But just know those animals are going to tie you down. They're no different than a child. Everything that animal needs is dependent on you. And you have to be there to provide that for them every day, sometimes twice a day. You've got to be there for them. The other thing is that I like to tell people to try to avoid is collecting animals. You see some of the homestead people here on YouTube, they just seem to keep collecting animals because they like them, of course. Animals are good to be around, but when you start buying feed for all those animals, that's going to take away from your main operation and you having the ability to provide for your family because you're having to buy so much feed. And I don't want you to get to a point where you can't afford the feed and the animals start to suffer. You also got to make sure if you're free grazing the animals, you have enough acreage to do that. So again, do your research, see how much acreage it takes, ballpark for the animals that you're going to have if you're going to free range them. Sometimes you're not going to have conditions weather-wise that year where you'll have enough feed, and then you'll have to buy feed for them then. It happens a lot out here in Nebraska. The weather conditions aren't favorable and you don't get the grass, you got to start buying hay early, and that really cuts into your bottom line. The other thing is, don't buy animals on a whim. You need to have the infrastructure in place before you buy those animals. Don't bring them in when you're not ready for them. That's not doing them justice, and you could have a lot of issues where you're harming the animals or they even die on you because you're not ready to have them. Make sure you got everything you need in place before that animal shows up on your homestead. So now let's talk a little bit about garden, which is one of my favorite subjects. I like to plant only in my garden the stuff that I would buy at the store. I try to stay away from novelty plants or things that I think are just cool. I keep it practical because a garden, again, is something that you're going to have to maintain quite often. And the bigger you get, the harder it is to maintain, and the less you're going to want to do it, you're going to get burnt out. So keep it practical, grow the things you like, don't waste time on things you don't like. Give yourself plenty of room, plenty of time, set it up to where it's easier to maintain, and you'll enjoy it a lot better. You can grow in a lot smaller space than you would imagine, and it just works out better for your family because you have the things you like and then you normally buy, and it's going to save you money because you're not having to buy that stuff at the store. But it goes back to rule number 1, keep it manageable. Another big thing, number 6, is think preservation. You can only eat so much, and if you plant a decent sized garden at all, you're not going to be able to keep up with that. If you're like us, your schedule's busy, you have a lot of stuff going on with family and friends, and you can't eat dinner at home every single day. So a lot of that stuff in your garden will end up going to waste. So think preservation. Plant things that can be preserved. Get the infrastructure you need to preserve the food, like pressure canners, water bath canners, and such. It's a big investment, but it's a long-term investment. And you will fill your pantry full of fantastic food that you can eat throughout the year. And you're not wasting all of that abundance that's coming out of your garden in the summer when it's just absolutely booming. You can stretch that harvest out through the rest of the year. I've got green beans in our pantry over here that are 3 years old. They keep just fine. And they didn't get wasted. They got put into our food inventory that we can use to feed us and sustain us. Now, number 7, we've just hit on it a little bit ago. Set yourself up for success. When you're planning projects and building projects on your farm, think about maintenance, think about the time that you're going to have to spend, and try to streamline those things. Like our garden out here with our drip system. I don't have to go out there and water every plant in the garden. I turn on a valve and that garden waters itself. I come back in whatever allotted amount of time that I give for that to water, knowing what the watering rate is for the system, and I just come back and shut it off. That's all the time I have to spend. When you plant your garden, give yourself plenty of room to work in between the rows, where you're not having to spend a lot of time doing little weeding in the rows that are too tight. You can get a rototiller in there and knock it out real quick, so you're not in there doing a lot of hand work. Make sure you got like automatic waterers for your animals. They do need to be checked and maintained, but you're not out there twice a day having to water your animals. But keep those troughs clean because you got to have clean water for your animals too. Now, along with your drip system or watering system for your gardens, you can also do those to where they're automatic. My old property that I had, a lot of my watering was automatic. I set it up on anti-siphon valves with a lawn sprinkler timer to where I would decide how much I wanted to water, and I would set those times up during the week, and I wouldn't have to think about it. I could plant my plants, that water system's going. I don't have to do anything but get out there and weed a little bit every now and then, and everything else just pretty much runs itself. It's a little bit of cost up front, but it's not terrible. PVC is not that expensive, and if you set yourself up right, when I laid in my garden beds, I put a PVC riser in every raised bed that I had, so I could do whatever watering system I wanted in that bed, whether it be drip hose or little sprinklers, little micro sprinklers, whatever I wanted in that bed. I had a riser in that bed that was on a system that was timed to where I didn't even have to think about watering. It worked out really well. Now with your animals, make sure you have the equipment that you need. It's a big investment up front, but again, a long-term investment. And if you're doing this stuff little by little, you'll be able to afford these things, and it's not such a huge expense up front if you're doing 1 or 2 projects at a time to completion and getting that done. Also, store your feed close to where you're feeding your animals so you're not carrying your feed halfway across your property. Put you a little hay building right next to your animal's pen, so all you got to do is throw the hay over the fence. It doesn't take very long at all. You get your chores done really fast and get done. And that's the key. Don't make it a burden. Now, one of the biggest time savers in your garden when you're setting yourself up for success when you're planting in the beginning of the season is mulch. Mulch is huge, and if you were watching our channel, we didn't have mulch last year because we had only been on the property a little bit of time. We didn't have time to create any compost or mulch or anything like that, and we really had to work hard last year to maintain that garden, and some of it even got away from me because we took a trip right in the middle of it, and I got behind. So mulch is huge. Mulch keeps those weeds from growing and saves you a lot of time in the garden with weeding, keeping your garden nice and clean. Lay that mulch down in a pretty good 2 to 3 inch layer. You won't get a weed in there. And if one just happens to pop up, they pull out so easy it's almost effortless. So mulch is huge. I cannot stress mulch enough, even in your flower beds. You've seen us mulch our flower beds here. It's not expensive. You don't have to go buy all the weed cloth and all that stuff. If you have a good 3 to 4 inches of mulch, weeds aren't going to grow. You don't need the weed cloth underneath. You don't need to go to that expense. But it is good to have a nice border. Those borders hold the mulch in. They keep it deep enough on the border to keep the weeds out. Plus it gives you like a good mow strip on the outside. So again, that's setting yourself up for success. You can weed spray right along that mow strip and it's effortless. You don't have to do a lot of weed eating and all that. Keep it as simple as you can. Have your operation running like a well-oiled machine, and it won't get to be where you don't enjoy it anymore. Now, number 8 is pretty much plan your work and work your plan. Set long-term goals and try not to do really quick things that fail. Know what you're going to be doing, know what you want, make a plan, work that plan in stages, in increments, which we're going to get into here in a minute. If you make a plan and follow that plan, you can still be flexible along the way. If you want to make changes, that's fine. But have a plan. Things always work much better when you have a plan. Now you can add to the plan, you can subtract from the plan. Again, keep it fluid, which is fine, but have some kind of plan. Remember, number 1 was don't do too much. Number 9 is don't do too much too soon. You got a lot of time to get this stuff done, and I know you're eager to get all these projects done, but you're going to get to a point to where you're doing too much again by trying to get everything done. You're not only doing too much, you're doing too much at one time. So if you have 5 or 6 projects in your plan, prioritize those projects. Take them on one at a time. Only buy the material for that project and take that project to completion before you start your next project. You'll be a lot more satisfied that way. It'll seem a lot more doable. I've made this mistake before where I have all these things I want to do. I go to the store, go to the big box store, buy all this stuff for all these projects, and then it all sits around in my way until I finish those projects, and I never get one project kind of fully finished. I'm working on 10 other projects at the same time. And I don't like clutter, and I don't like things on my way, and things run a lot more efficient if you finish a project first before moving on to the next project, and then go purchase those things for that project, one, they're not in the way, and two, you don't have all that expense up front and you're spreading it out over time and you're actually getting things done. So by the time you move on to the next project, the last one's in place, it's working well, hopefully you've got everything dialed in, and then you can move on to the next big project and do that well and finish it to completion. It works so much better that way, and you will be so much happier by doing it that way. Don't have a bunch of stuff unfinished laying around. One, it clutters up your homestead. There's stuff laying everywhere. Everything looks disheveled and doesn't look squared away. And it's just not the right thing to do, in my opinion. Now, last but certainly not least, and I was really happy when we did this. Wait for the perfect property. Again, I know you're eager and you want to get out and start getting your hands dirty, working on the land and doing things homestead. But don't get in such a hurry to where you buy a property that really doesn't fit your needs or you're not going to be happy with in the long run. Kelly gave me a hard time when we were looking for our previous property, because every time she would show me a property, I would always find something wrong with it. And she thought I didn't want a new property and I didn't want to move. And that just really was not the case. I didn't want to buy something that was already going to be a project for me. Something that I had to do a lot of fixing to get it to where I needed it to be, because I already have a lot of things that I want to do in my mind, stuff I want to accomplish. If I have to do a lot of renovations, if I have to do a lot of groundwork, if I have to build a lot of infrastructure to do what I want to do, stuff that's not already there on the property, that takes away from my project funds. If we got to buy a house where I have to do lots of renovations to make the house livable, that takes away from funds that I want to spend on my homestead projects that I want to do. Now, if you enjoy renovating, that's great. And if you have the funds for that, again, that's great. A one-size carbon copy, cookie cutter plan is not going to fit everybody. Everybody's going to have different needs and different wants. But I have found that if I wait for that property, and it will come up, believe me. If you're looking, it will come up. You may have to be patient. It may take a year or two even. But buy that property that already has everything that you need, or as much as you need. And make it to where you're not having to spend a lot of time doing stuff you don't want to do to get to the stuff that you do want to do. That's frustrating, and again, it takes a lot of your money. So, those are the 10 things that I think are the most important if you want to start a homestead, or if you think that's something that you want to do or pursue. So, but, again, I'm not your expert. I just know a few things here and there. Only you will know what you need and what your needs are or what your likes are. So I don't want to sit here and tell you I know everything, because I don't. But we're trying to help people be successful, and that's what the purpose of this video was. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it wasn't too much rambling, because, again, I don't like rambling either. I know how you feel. But we thought we needed to get that information out there if you're just starting up. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. We love you guys. We invite the comments. If you have some comments on this content in this video, please leave those comments. That's going to help other people as well, because they can see your comments and the experiences that you've had. So see you guys on the next video. Bye.